Action. Welcome back. We've got a surprise for you guys here today. Justin and Brad from Kinze are on their way down here today. We are going to be changing over the 3605 to corn meters so I can go plant the corn maze at the pumpkin patch. So I guess if you guys haven't missed the last couple of videos or something like that, the big surprise is Molly and I are opening an agritourism farm this fall near Centerville. Pumpkin patch, corn maze, fall fun farm, basically along those lines. But we need to get the corn maze planted, so we figured, hey, some people have asked, how do you switch over the 3605 from soybeans to corn? I've actually never done that myself, so we're gonna do that today. They're bringing down the meters along with a couple of other things, and then I think we'll probably try and take a chance to look at the key differences in between the 3605 and the 3600 bean planters. Well, I call them bean planters, but they're really just planters because they can both plant corn and wheat and all other things. But if you would, take a quick second to hit the thumbs up button for us. Helps out the videos. We appreciate it. So believe it or not, I've never done this before.
Really?
Never.
Never changed them over?
That bean planter's been a bean planter for as long as I've been running it, and the corn planter's been a corn planter for as long as I've been running it. Well, we did plant beans with the corn planter one time. Bad stand, we
sure
put the bean meters in, but
yep.
Other than that, I've never done this.
Nice.
So you get to teach me.
First
and
time,
YouTube.
First time for everything.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing is switching this over from beans to corn so I can go plant the corn maze. Brad's going to teach us how to actually switch this planter over from one crop to the other. What are the things that we have to do?
So of course the big thing we're going to have to do is change this over to finger pickup meters, because this one's got finger pickup and brush meter options. So we're going to have to dump out any leftover soybeans that are in our rear rows, change over our meter, and then of course we're going to have to shut off our clutch that drives the front and do the same thing on the front rows if we were changing it specifically to corn. The nice part about it though, with split rows, really all we have to do on the split rows to not use them, if we're going between corn and beans mid-season, we can just lock those rows up, leave the meters alone, and we're just gonna cap off our bulk fill hoses, and then we're ready to go and just use the rear rows only. So we're gonna walk through changing out the rears, get our meters switched over, and then we'll talk about the fronts kind of separate and independent. So that way we know. So first thing, once we get to the row unit, obviously we're gonna undo or disconnect our meter drive clutch, undo our bulk fill hose, and then really the easiest thing that I found, of course, if there's seed in the meter and in this mini hopper itself, which there's probably a little bit left inside, we take our cover off. There's a little bit in there, which is about the normal amount of beans as you would have running through the field as a whole. We take this guy off, and really the easiest once you take it out, just simply to dump it in same spot. So once we get our seeds all the way out, then we can go over to our tailgate and we'll switch out the meter and put our corn meters on. Biggest maintenance point on the brush meter, again, as we're going and putting corn meters on here, the biggest maintenance item, make sure we take the disc off. Okay, this is of course our 2.0 brush meter, so they have the quick disconnect center. Our older generations, which of course just have 2 wing nuts, but same concept. You want to take that disc off. Why is that important? Of course, inside the brush meter, hence the name, there's a bunch of brushes inside. And by leaving that disc on all the time, you're of course compressing those brushes. You can see just normal wear here as we go around the meter. Of course, this is where the seed's gonna load into the outer edge of the disc. That brush holds those seeds on the outer edge of our pocket or in these pockets. Of course, as soon as it gets here, it's the end of the brush, it falls down, of course, into our seed trench. By taking the disc off, it allows those brushes to relax and get more of a vertical stance. So again, we just get longer wear life. We never want to use any compressed air inside of here because again, that'll just fray the brushes as a whole. So no compressed air. You know, you want to take a small screwdriver and get the hulls out, those type of things, but we don't want to use compressed air. It's just going to damage them. And then you're just going to have to replace them next year, because once they get frayed out, which of course is under normal wear and tear conditions in that 200 row acre life expectancy, new brushes go in. The inherent troubleshooting with a brush meter, if it's under planting, majority of the time it's because the brushes are wore out, they're bent over, and of course they're not holding the seed in that outer edge of the disc. So we're going to take this guy off. Again, there's no need to number these. They don't have to go on the same row, none of that configuration. So just take them off, store them separate off of the meter as a whole.
He was saying the wing nut ones, that's what's on the 3600, and that's what we've had to use. But the other thing about the 3600 that I noticed is a little bit different is that we use screws and stuff to hold these in. Can you show us how these brushes actually pop out of there now?
Yep, so it's all toolless design. So each one has locking tabs inside, both top and bottom. So you're gonna push and rotate this meter down, and then those will come out as one piece. As you notice too, when you go and get new parts, even for those older generation brush meters, you'll notice that the brushes you get will be very similar to these or the locking tabs. You can see the screws or the retainer holes in here. It's the same as the older generation brush meters. We actually used hardware to hold these brushes in. These do not use it. They're toolless, where you have locking tabs that you physically rotate these locking tabs out.
How many different meters or plates do you have available for this planter?
There's several in there. I mean, we have 3 different soybean discs now. Of course, our 60 cell, it's been around for a long time. We introduced this 54 cell when we came out with the 2.0 brush meter. This one kind of fits the mid-seed size range. The big difference between soybean discs are the seed size range and then, of course, population rate. The biggest item on soybean size is this 54 cells, kind of that mid-range of that 2,500 to 1,800 seeds per pound range in that side. Our 60 cell disc, which of course is our black disc, been around for a very long time, is more of our smaller seed size. And then we got our 48 cell, which gets our big guys for the big soybean. So 3 soybean discs. We offer cotton, milo, wheat, obviously, and several different discs for each one of those crops. So there's a multitude of discs depending on your application, seed size, and population.
Which we had some plates get brought down for us, which are the 54 cell wheat plates. Might try to plant some wheat with it, and or cereal rye cover crop.
Yep. The nice part about the wheat plate, which has been a big proponent, is the use in cover crop application. So sure, it's a wheat disc. We got a lot of guys that run mixtures, triticale and all those other type of mixtures for cover crop too. So it's a pretty flexible disc. The main focus is wheat, but it'll plant mixes as well.
Which last year or 2 years ago, across the road there, if you remember, I planted 15-inch cereal rye, then split the difference with the soybeans. I really liked how that worked out. Kind of using actually the planter as a tillage tool to break up the residue in the fall there. Get your cover crop growing and plant in between those rows. Might try that again.
So we got our disc off, we're ready to switch meters. Have our new corn meter here, obviously fresh out of the box. Really no difference than if we were on a standard hopper machine, where we're gonna take our thumb screws off. Physically pull our brush meter off, and then of course take our corn meter. Again, goes right in our same locations. Mounting tabs here that help you line it up. Again, just like the bottom of a box hopper. Put our 2 thumb screws back in. Don't have to get crazy with the tightness here. Finger tight or pliers tight is good enough. Of course, first time these guys have been out of the box, we got to put our dust cover on. Put this guy back on the row, and 1 row's done.
I about said 23 more times, but only 11 more times.
Only 11 more times.
Only 11 more times.
Only 11 more times. Can you own your own prescription for the corn maze?
I'm not doing that, no.
Just gonna go in and cut it out.
Not this year. I'm going in and cutting it out. So we have all the finger meters in now, and what Justin's doing is putting on the blockers.
Yep.
Blockers.
Just blocks the seed from the entrainer to the end here, so we're not filling your rows up with corn seed.
And it doesn't even fill up the hoses, because if there's no airflow to that, it won't even push it out. And then I think the next step would be to lock them up, correct?
Yep, we'll lock them up and then we'll disengage the clutch that runs the drive line on your crossover chains. So then we've got these basically fully out of commission for when we're planting 30-inch corn.
And then we got to program the monitor too, because the
Gotta put
monitor
a configuration in for
monitor hasn't been programmed. So, but let's go see how one of those brushes comes out of the meter real quick.
All right, so we talked about some maintenance before. We got all our meters switched over. Just looking at the brush meter as a whole, we talked about the hulls and those type of things in there. We talked about the toolless items on this guy. So your bottom retainer, which of course has your black or your lower brushes in it, of course your upper brush, and then your brush retainer, and then of course you have the stainless wear band that sits inside here, which of course just protects us from wear in the meter. This whole assembly, so these top retainer and this lower retainer rotates together. So you can see we got lock tabs, and basically the main lock tab here, arrows to line up when you're locking it back together. So to take them out, or if you want to disassemble, we're going to lift up our tab and physically rotate these the right way, this way. So you'll basically go to they stop. You can see your now tabs up there are lined up, and can pull this guy apart. So you get all your components.
So is this one replaceable item, or do you replace these actual little brushes in this piece?
This is a one assembly. Kind of a good rule of thumb is the second time you replace the blue one, you replace the black one. Is kind of a good rule of thumb. A lot of guys will honestly replace them at the same time. A lot of variables with how long the blue brush lasts. Of course, the maintenance that we talked about, making sure you take the disc off. How much graphite you use. As you can see, our hands are awful black, so we're using plenty of graphite. Another good test, if you take the disc out, wipe your fingers across it, your fingers should be black. That way you know you're using enough graphite. Talc can be used. The only time I really recommend using talc is if the seed is sticky. Talc is a drying agent, not a lubricant. So graphite is really the #1 recommendation on the soybean side. Very low cost meter to rebuild. I mean, you're probably talking 50 bucks to replace pretty much everything in the meter. You got a brand new meter right out of the box. Now you can see the width of this retainer is shorter. This is the one that comes in the meter. This is the one that's used most of the time for beans and majority of the crops. You get in some Milos, we have a taller retainer. Really the only difference is it's just taller. That holds these bristles smaller because Milo is a smaller seed. So depending on the disc, you might have to change this out with your disc. Otherwise, we'll really use this one for majority of them. Seated. Rotate. Arrows are lined up. You obviously cannot pull this guy out. Ready to go.
So when he was saying about the graphite, I used to run a lot of the 80-20 mix, and we started running heavier graphite a little bit through the season. Just started putting the Kinze graphite in there. Definitely helped the performance because it's 80% talc, 20% graphite. We used way more graphite through the second half of the season. Definitely improvements. So the next thing we're going to do is demonstrate on how to dump the bulk hoppers here. There's not a lot of seed in this planter right now, but we're still going to show you guys.
On any Kinze bulk fill planter, no matter the model, there's always a location for clean out chute for our bulk fill tanks. So this one hasn't been used yet this year, obviously. So clean out chute, basically what this guy does is it's gonna go under the tank. We're gonna hook it on the bottom. We can open up our doors and then have all the seed fall directly into our catch container. So whether it's a Pro Box, a 5-gallon bucket, in our case, a big trash can, that we can catch all the seed, doesn't spill all over the place. So we'll walk up to the front, figure this out. Really the easiest way, we take our bulk fill hoses off the front. It's just easier to get in here. Got our hooks. A lot of times I just like to leave the front one unhooked, and then there's quick release latches on our bulk fill Entrainer. And of course, inside the Entrainer, this being the 05 series, and really no different than any Entrainer we've had, there's no mechanical agitation or anything like that inside this tank. So once we open these doors, everything comes out the bottom of the tank. And I usually start in the middle just because it's easier. We quick flip those guys up with your quick latches, and once we move our latches back, we can open our doors on the bottom.
And right now there would be a whole bunch of seed coming out of there.
Normally.
If there isn't much seed in there at all.
Some guy did a good job planting her own.
So as Brad closes those up, there's something that I didn't show you on this year. But say you did have a blockage, right here is a storage shim I don't know what you would call this, a blockage shim.
Clean out slide.
Pull this side. You can shove it on in there like so, and that'll allow you to drop whatever could be blocking it out without dumping the entire tank.
All right, so we have all our corn meters switched. Obviously we don't want the front drive shaft to turn, so on the rear on both sides, of course one for each side of the planter, we're going to turn this guy over, our meter kickout clutch, and then these pins, a lot of times we'll have to rotate this guy back, let those pins come loose, they'll pop out, and then this shaft will spin, and of course our chain won't. So we'll just have to rock this shaft back and have these alignment pins come out so it will slip to drive the front rows. So we'll do the same on the other side, and then we're ready to lock up rows. And of course this planter has pneumatic down pressure on it. And just like any other split row combination, you always want to of course put your downforce in the lowest setting so it's easier, unless you're you know, trying out for strongman competition, you want to work out, you can leave it heavy if you want. I would recommend putting it in the lowest setting. So on springs, you know, moving your springs all the way back. Since this one's got pneumatic, what we've done is taken most of the air pressure out of the bag. The only recommendation I would tell you, especially on the airbag side, is just to leave a little bit of air in so they stay plump like this guy is. When you lock it up, of course this guy is going to compress a ways. You'll see that here in a second. By leaving a little air in it, it stops that bag from folding over top of itself and wearing on the folds. To lock up any push unit on a Kinze planter, we have spring-loaded lockups. There's one on each side. So basically we're going to flip this guy ahead on both sides. Flip this guy ahead. Then we have our lift bar. We're going to take our lift bar out, put that on a row unit, and basically just pick up until they lock. Set it down and move on to the next one. So you can see our airbag's fairly compressed, has decent plumped air inside, so this is how you'd want it when you're planting beans. On the back of the air compressor is a little shutoff valve for the push rows. Of course, once we lock them all up, we'll show that here in a second, we're going to shut off the air to the push rows. So of course when we adjust our down pressure for our corn rows, we're obviously not putting more air to the fronts and of course creating more pressure, which we don't need. So only 11 more to go and we'll be done locking these guys up. So back on PDP, of course, we locked up our rows to shut off air or down pressure going to the front rows. Really, it's just simple as rotating that valve so we shut off air going to the front. These two mechanical valves back here are actually your manual overrides for decrease and increase. So the gauge is pounds of air in the bags. The actual down force on the row is this value times 4. So let's say it's 20 pounds, got approximately 80 pounds of down pressure.
And then the last thing that we would need to do is set the markers out to the corn rows, the 30-inch rows. We're not going to be doing that because I'm not going to be using the markers, and then they'd have to get set back in. This spring you heard me talk about that the other bean planter, which is the 3600, is a 1224, so it's very similar to this planter, other than this is an 05 series, which with the 05 series comes with a few enhancements added into it, and we're going to go over those real quick.
So 05 enhancements, really especially on a 3000 series, is mainly focused on the row unit as a whole, and we kind of work our way front to back on the row unit of what's changed. And it really starts up front. You guys have probably noticed already that our parallel alarms are larger. We kind of have these larger oblong ends on each side. That's because we went to double bushing parallel arms. So basically we made larger oversized items. So we have a pressed in bushing inside the arm and then another bushing inside of it. Of course, why is that important? With that double bushing design, we actually increased our wear area by over 25% and have over doubled the life of your parallel arm bushings. The other part is, once you get to that point of needing replacement, you can simply press out the bushing in the arm, put a new bushing in, or the floating bushing, and then you're ready to go without having to replace the arm itself. So kind of doubles the life of these guys. Again, this is on any 3000 model, not just 3605. Any 05 series has double bushing parallel arms, and of course it's both front and rear. We come back, we get into kind of the meat and potatoes where we talk about our disc opener blades themselves that are obviously doing the cutting through the ground, making your trench at the bottom. We went to double bearing disc opener blades. So instead of the single row bearing we've had for a long time, we went to double row bearing disc opener blades. The hub that encapsulates it is now a machine style hub. So it just keeps the bearing running more true, and then of course evenly loads that bearing going through the field. And we also increase the rivets that hold that hub onto the blade. Again, just better durability, longer life of the bearing, and of course of the blade itself. So standard equipment, double bearing disc opener blades. Inside, of course, we get inside the row unit at the very bottom. A lot of people call it a seed tube guard or a frog. There's kind of a lot of different names. We call it kind of an inner scraper seed tube guard. And of course, that's at the bottom of the row, protecting the bottom of the shank from wear. The piece we went to looks identical to what we've done a lot in the last however many years. It hasn't changed, but the material that it's made out of, it's a different type of tool steel now. So it's a lot harder, a lot more durable, a lot longer life. So we've really almost doubled the life of that inner seed tube guard as well. Again, just provide more durability and longevity of the row unit. We've also, the last couple years, gone to thicker gauge wheel pockets on our gauge wheel arms. So the thickness of this guy, where of course our ball and socket rides for our depth adjust, both width and depth, have gotten thicker. Again, doubling the life of those guys as well. So really increase the service intervals on a 3005 series row unit. The other benefit is everything I've talked about is backwards compatible with any of our other 3000 series units. So 3000 series really been around since model year 2000. So I know there's a lot of them out there. You can put all these upgrades on. They're direct replacements for you. So if you guys are looking at rebuilding your planter, especially as you get in the fall, winter time, take a look at those high wear pieces. Good opportunity to upgrade and almost make your planter an 05 series if you so choose.
And then the other thing that these have is actually has the more fancy seed tubes on them, so that you can actually see how the planter's planting. And actually something that didn't make it in one of the videos because I got rained out that day is I actually had a row unit that was like planting a little bit over and a little bit over and a little bit over. And I got out and I'm like, there's something wrong with it. And I walked back here to it and I had just gotten a little bit of a corn leaf stuck around the sprocket right here. And those sensors realized that. I took the corn leaf off and it fixed it.
One of the other bigger changes in the 05 series, and we kind of talked about it a little bit when we were cleaning out the hoppers as we're getting ready to switch to corn, is the bulk fill entrainer on the bottom of the tank. So entrainer is just kind of our term for where the air and seed meet and of course distribute it out to the rows themselves. We kind of redesigned it, but our core principle of how our entrainer works is the same, meaning there's no mechanical agitation inside this entrainer. It's purely airflow is all that we utilize. So the air never stops inside our bulk tanks and of course inside the entrainer. So air is always coming to the row. So there's never any seeds stuck in the hose. More importantly, we changed it to in the 05 series to do a couple things. One, make it more efficient. So you actually can run less pressure with the same amount of flow. Of course, help support high speed seed delivery. So the same time we went to 05 series planters, we introduced our high-speed metering system as well. So on our 3665, kind of the next model up, you can get high speed on it. This helps support high speed. More importantly though, not only does it help support high speed, it helps support more crops. It does a better job with large size seeds, so you get in the 60 to 70 pound range stuff. It flows those a lot better, and a whole variety of other crops, from sweet corn to sugar beets to milo to cotton to sunflowers. So it's a lot more flexible, and again, just a more reliable, better experience with various seed sizes. So all 05 series have this style of entrainer on it. Again, just like we talked about in all the row unit items, you can upgrade yours if you have one. Again, we've had bulk fill out since 2009. You can update your 2009 planter and put the new 05 series entrainer on it as well. So we got kits for it. Dealer can help get you the kit for your planter. You can make it an 05 series too, and help with flowability, especially when you get in those large seed sizes.
So now that we've made all the switches from soybeans to corn, we're gonna head into the pumpkin patch there in Centerville and see if we can't get it planted today. Not the pumpkins, corn from corn maze. It's gonna be an interesting trial. Got a couple of boys eyeballing a dozer. What do you think of that, Jewel?
I haven't seen it in person yet.
So after a quick checkout of the dozer over there, we're going to show you guys how you can manually run the hydraulics from the back of this planter, and that way we make sure that actually things are flowing the way they should be and planting.
The nice part about hydraulic drive is you can manually come back here and have this drive run to check all your meters are putting seed out, oiling chains, all that kind of stuff. So right on top of the valve, and it's loud because the bulk fan's running, but there's that little red thumb screw. Basically, it's a manual override. So normal operation, it's all the way out until it stops. For our application, we want to turn it in slowly until you see the drive start running. Clutches aren't running, so that's why there's no seed coming out. But you can see the drive turn in, oil all your chains. You can see our drive clutch is now disengaged like we talked about earlier, so it's just other side doing the same. So after you do your chains or whatever it might be, back here. Turn it all the way out until the screw stops. Then you're good to go.
My plan is I'm going to do full rate around the back, 24 rows all along up the front, 12 rows on that side. That'll make full population, and then try and cut everything else in half. So what do you see typically for singulation?
You're 98, depending on the seed size, 98.9, 98.
Is there
probably won't get super high with being their first time running in 4 acres. It'll be a little.
So what can you do to adjust for singulation with finger meters?
Lubrication's the first. Add more graphite, reduce graphite.
Okay.
Travel speed is the other. I mean, in field. Otherwise, you got to get to the point where you're adjusting rolling torque and those type of things.
So it's not like vac meters where I can adjust the vac.
Yeah.
On the go, and
yep, you can't find it.
Or those or the knockouts and stuff like that. Which for me this year I stayed really accurate just by adjusting the back. One guy. Ooh. Maybe go for a little more down pressure, huh?
Yeah, he's a little shallow, not a lot of moisture here.
Maybe go another notch deeper.
A quarter probably wouldn't be bad. Here's another one. It's not bad.
There's more. Look, we'll get the volunteer corn anyways. Well, Brad, is this the first time you've ever planted a corn maze?
This is the first time I've ever planted a corn maze. That's for sure. One thing off my bucket list now.
Might be the last time he ever wants to plant a corn maze, but he's planting a corn maze. All right, so the Kinze boys have headed back north, and I've gotten a lot of questions about how I'm going to plant this pumpkin patch. So what I'm doing here is along both sides putting a border in there. So there's going to be 60 feet along the beans right there. And then there's 12 rows, so 30 feet that'll be going along this fence line. That should make it feel like people are in the patch, I guess you could say. And then I did another, which that's planted at 32,000, and then this pass right there, and this pass along here, bordering the maize, is also planted at 32,000. What we're going to do is double plant, which some of it's already happened, the inside of it. So if you look at that, that's double planted right there, and what I did is I cut the rate down to 16,000, and then I'll come back in a little bit later and mow in and rototill in the design. We'll get back to work with that, but Molly's coming to the ride. And so right here will be...
This is my corn maze.
Front of your corn maze.
This is my corn maze.
This will be your corn maze.
I have a corn maze.
So there it is. You guys can see the checkerboard, can't you? That's pretty darn cool. So how I'm gonna lay it out, just a little future reference here. I'm gonna do a grid like this and then mow in the path and stuff. Molly will make a video on that, you guys can see that. I'm gonna fold up, head back to the shop, and then tell you a little surprise about this thing. So obviously, I forgot to shoot the end of that clip and tell you guys the surprise. We're actually, as in Molly and I, are out here walking our corn maze. So the corn has grown significantly since this video has been rolled out, but the surprise is that Kinze planter is staying on the farm. Dad and I have purchased it. We fell in love with it for love at first seed, I think was like my first video with that planter. A lot of things that we liked about it. Dad and I have invested in another Kinze product, which is never a bad investment in our books. So that planter's here to stay, and good backup for corn and help us continue to get the beans in really nicely like we did this year. Beans are tall enough that little May over here, come here Lola, Lola come. She's got to now hop through the beans, don't you? But there's beans, this corn's chest high now, which most of the corn in the area is now starting to tassel. So anyways guys, I think that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to Kinze for bringing us that planter and letting us show it to you guys. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Missed.